What's going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company with a spinnerbait today. I haven't uploaded, I realized I haven't really uploaded just a bass spinnerbait in a long time. I think I've only done like one. So I thought I've got this 3/8 ounce, I think these are called reed runners from Northland. I really like Northland. Their spinnerbaits are pretty good, and it's just decently priced. I mean, these days you can spend like $15 on a spinnerbait. Anyway, so reed runner spinnerbait 3/8 ounce. This is just pretty much a gold. I took the gold willow blade that it came with off just for convenience of tying. I left all this stuff on. It might be kind of annoying on the camera, but I didn't really feel like bending that wire all the way because then that would just make it longer anyway. So I'm going to try and just match this head. And so I've got some polar goat in yellow, and I blended it with a little Arctic goat black. The difference between polar goat and Arctic goat, I really don't know. Obviously, the lengths are a lot different, but other than that, it's super similar consistency. I've got some bucktail, just some golden colors, and then black. I thought about maybe doing white, but I thought black might maybe call this a perch pattern or something like that. And then I've got a little gold polar flash that I'm going to end up putting on sporadically throughout. I haven't put any thread up here yet because I'll just do it right at the end when I get up there. But it's going to be a pretty bulky bait. I mean, 3/8 ounce is pretty heavy for a spinnerbait. I mean, the next size up would be a 1/2 ounce, and that's pretty big. So I want this bait, I don't know, maybe to be, it's a pretty long bait if you include the wire. So I'm not going to add too much material. I'll probably just go back to my brass. That's a pretty standard measurement for me. I'm going to put down a little bit of deer hair right at the bottom, just because I've got this goat that I don't want to be too thin. It's actually a really thick cut of goat that I put on there. But I'm going to go back to about maybe like right here, and then just the last little section will be just the goat. Maybe just a little bit shorter. So I'll get my thread corded up. And then I can almost talk about, this is a weird body for a spinner, not necessarily for a spinnerbait. Again, I've said it a million times. This wasn't made to be tied on, so no one cares that it's inconvenient. No one's gonna listen to me, so I'm just gonna get that spun on there. And I don't want this, I got this all from the very top of the tail because I don't want much flare out of this. I might even kind of push it back just a little, just get like a loose wrap like this, and then come back up because I don't want there to be tons of flare in there. And then I'm going to actually put down just a little bit of flash now. I like polar flash. It's kind of like tinsel, but it's just a different texture. I'm just going to put a little bit of flash in this, just so it's under that Arctic goat, or the, I'll just say goat, I guess, because it's technically two different goats. Just going to put a little bit down, and I'm actually going to cut this, just because if I don't want it that long. And I want to make sure that it's tapered. Just put a little bit more kind of on top. Get over there. Push that around, get some on my other side. Just a little bit, not a ton. Then I can just cut off the rest, and I actually might just save that for later, but I've got a couple other stacks too. that I'm going to put down. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've got this goat, and I've just, to my best ability, blended all of this gold and black. And the black stands out a little bit more, so I actually trim down that black so the tip of this is going to be mostly gold, just so it shows a little bit more, because it's supposed to be more of a gold bait. And so I want to go down right to about my brass. So that should be pretty good. I want to make sure that all of these are lined up. Make sure my thread is corded. This is going to add a really big thread bump, but that's alright. And I'm hoping that it doesn't get too caught up in my hook when I'm fishing with this, because this stuff is super limp. So I might end up, I always have a comb in the boat anyway, because a lot of times stuff gets, you gotta comb stuff out, but I just want to make sure that that's uneven. That should be pretty good. There's always a couple longer strands that don't want to cooperate. So I'm going to get that down really, really tight. And then I can work my way up and get that first thing of deer hair down. There we go. Just make sure. So I'll probably start a little less than halfway. For my first stack. And this first one is more gold, and it's going to get darker as it goes up. And I just want, I don't want this to completely cover that. So it's actually going to be a little bit shorter than I would normally do, because I want that tail to be on its own. And then maybe after this stack, I'll put some polar flash on. Again, this is a really thick lead body, so you can't be too stingy with the deer hair. Otherwise, you're just going to have a really thin looking bait. And sometimes that's okay, but and there's not going to be any flare in this because I got this from the top of the tail. But as I go up, I should have more and more flare. Really wide wraps with that stupid metal that gets in your way. So I'll put down a little more polar flash right on top of this stack. Just taper it out. Maybe this one will be a little bit longer. Comb it out. Just get that pushed right on what will be the bottom. Get maybe 3 wraps on there. And I can flip this and do the same to this side. I really like using spinnerbaits, and I know I've uploaded those twin spins. Spinnerbaits are just such a versatile bait. chatterbaits too. Or bladed jigs, I guess. And I can just trim off all my excess. And I'll work my way up off this giant thread bump. And I'm going to come right up to this skirt keeper. And that's where I'm going to put my second stack. And maybe I'll put down just a little bit of super glue. Just for some durability. But I don't know. I think super glue is more of a mental thing. Unless you're catching barracuda or something. So again, this is going to get darker as I go up. And it's going to get thicker. And the hair is going to have more trapped air in it as I go up as well. And you just want to be conscious of all that. If you just cut your hair from the same spot of the tail, for most tails, you're either going to have flare all the way through or you'll have none. And really, you don't need it too much because when the bait gets wet anyway, it's going to mat down. But still nice to have some. Alright, so for this next stack, I just want it to be a little bit shorter than that last one. So I'm going to actually cut off quite a bit of hair, because this bait's not going to be crazy long, because I really don't want to have to add a treble or a trailer to this bait. But sometimes you have to, and there's going to be more flare in here. I can already see that. Make sure all this gets worked around evenly. And I'll end up trimming these butts up here. See if I can get any flare out of that. Yeah, there's plenty. I want that flare to be pretty even, so I'm pulling on it on all sides just to make sure. But again, I've said it before, this bait isn't getting stripped in the water. See, if it's not like perfectly crazy even, you really don't have to worry too much about it. You want it to be as even as you can, but it's not ever going to affect the way that it swims. I'm going to get that tied down really well. And I'm just going to push right up against this skirt bump, keeper, whatever you want to call it. And I'll put a little bit more polar flash down right here. If you think this is a walleye pattern or a perch pattern, I think either one would work for me. Leave a comment for what you think. I was intentionally trying to do this as a perch, but my gut's starting to say that's a walleye, son. What do bass eat more? Baby perch or baby walleye? So I'll get that right there. Got a lot of flare in some of those hairs. Get that down. Ooh. Hold it a little bit. And I'm going to flip this. Polar flash, you got to make sure you comb it. Whenever I take some of this off, I always make sure and I comb it, because it can kind of tangle up a lot more or eat more easily than your typical tinsel, I think. It's always harder to spin this stuff when there's hair behind it, because it just wants to get trapped in that hair. It doesn't want to move. And maybe I'll just get this and put this on the bottom ish, just to waste less. And I'll get that nice and cinched down. And I'm not going to cut my thread and bring it up. I'll just wrap it. But there's going to be a lot of open space, because I'm going to bring this right up to my head. So this is going to be a little bit of a thicker stack, but it's not going to quite be very long. I want it to be shorter for sure. And I can just feel how much air is in each of these hairs. It's almost like spinning a bass jig, but I don't want to put too much pressure on it, because I don't want to flare it too much yet. I want to get it spun around and kind of tied down a little bit first. Make sure that it's evenly distributed. Before anything else happens. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to work my way up. And there will be some hairs that don't want to cooperate, and that's okay. I'll just use my scissors to get those off. And that should be good. So now, get my blade out. You could almost leave it. I've always thought about just trimming this. I think it's like, what is it, a Buford or something like that? That has the little bushy collar on it like that. I've just never done it before, but I kind of want to see if I can get more flare. No, I've done too many wraps. That's alright. I can almost just tease it out. So I'll get my razor blade and we'll get this thing trimmed up. Get that blade back on. All right, there it is. I wish I would have rained down on this a little more to get some more flare out of it. But luckily that hair has enough air where if you just kind of tug up, you can usually get some more flare out of it. Right now it just wants to wrap in with the polar flash. So there you go, perch or walleye, it's your decision. The gold in the hair is a little bit off. It actually matches the head a little bit better than this tail, but I mean, nothing's perfect, right? So yeah, perch or walleye, call it what you want. 3/8 ounce, nice little spinnerbait. Junior's Fishing Company, juniorsfishing.com. Hoping to get a nice little 6-pounder on this one. See you soon.